Welcome back, everybody. I know it's been quite some time since I put out my last video, but in some personal news, I am celebrating the birth of my first child. So thank you all for your patience. And I'm super excited to talk about what's going on in the market and what we could potentially be looking at. And that brings me to, are we going into a recession? I know the stock market is approaching its all-time highs, and we haven't seen too much of a dip in that aspect, but we're going to be taking a look at the 5 different areas that you can look into to see if Canada is going into a recession. Now, you can take this playbook into any country, but specifically in this video, we are going to be using the approach of Canada. But if this is your first time here, or if you're coming back, my name's Nick, and welcome to Ways to Wealth. Before we get into the 5 factors, make sure you stay tuned to the end of the video. I'll be giving my estimation as to what's going to happen in a year, especially when it comes to Canada and the recession. But with that being said, let's jump into the first area to watch, and that is a decline in GDP. Now, if you don't know what GDP is, it's gross domestic product. That is how the economy is growing overall. It's a very simplistic definition, but a definition of a recession is 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. So we'll jump into trading economics here, and we'll take a look at how the Canadian economy has been doing over the past 10 years. And we can see here that the only negative quarter was during that 2020 blip, where we didn't know what was going to happen in the future. Surprisingly, in 2022, we did have over 3% of GDP growth, which is miles away from negative and actually a little bit above what the Canadian government was expecting. Now, if we take a step back, we can take a look at the 25-year, and we can see that the last time it went negative was the 08-09 financial crisis. And for the most part, it does hover in between 1% to 3%. So by no means is this signaling a recession right now, but of course, there's more things that we're going to take a look at. More importantly, let's take a look at what some economists are expecting for the future. So we'll go to TD Bank here, and we can see on the first line, they give you the real GDP expectation. And we're currently in Q3 of 2023, so we're not negative because it is projecting that we are hovering around 0.6, and they have us trending at very marginal growth. So what this is predicting is that when the Bank of Canada comes out and says soft landing, we're going to increase interest rates without impacting the economy into a long, hard, steaded recession. Well, this is what TD is saying here. We'll also take a look at the budget from the federal government. And what we can see here is that they're actually predicting somewhat of the same thing. So on this graph, this is the real GDP growth projections, real meaning that they're taking inflation out of the picture. We do see that the 3% that they were projecting, they actually hit, if not did a little bit better. They do see 2023 as a slow growth year. And then additionally, they have 2024 on the rebound. So in terms of looking at this from a recession aspect, it doesn't really signal hot red flaming gasps that we are going into a recession. But again, these are just projections, and we'll move on to the next one. The second area I always like to take a look at is a decline in real income. What is happening with the consumer? And one of the areas that I like to start is disposable income. Disposable income is after you've paid all your bills. Do you have money to go out to the movies? Do you have money to go out to dinner? This is what makes the economy go. And if people do not have that disposable income, then we're going to see the economy start to laggard. So a way that I check that out is going back to trading economics, and it shows you the Canadian disposable personal income. And we see that these levels are still high, especially dating back to early this year. All of these numbers are going to be kind of in the past. So if we do start to see them decline, it'll be a metric that we've seen a few months behind. So it's not going to be something that's a leading indicator. It's more of a lagging indicator. And if we take a look over the past 25 years, we can see that this number has steadily increased. We are making more money as Canadians. We are doing better jobs of getting better income to employees. But the thing that is concerning to me is that we're starting to see a little bit of a downtick here in the last couple months. So if you're aware, Canadians have made more money in the past couple of years due to inflation. A lot of employers that were looking to get people into jobs, they had to pay more for that. So that's where we did see that spike kind of after 2020. But the fact of the matter is we're starting to see a downtrend, and it's something to keep on the radar moving forward. Now, to take a look at something that is a little bit more recent, a little bit more relevant, RBC puts out a special report on consumer spending here in Canada, and we're going to quickly go over some of the things that are kind of standing out to me. So it gives you an in-depth idea of what's happening on the consumer level, especially here in Canada. So we have real retail spending, and that is slowing. People aren't buying goods anymore, but you could say that people bought all of their goods in that 2020 to 2021 era, where we were all sitting at home shopping on Amazon. But it's something to keep in the back of your head because it is an important part of the economy. We do see Canadians are spending more at restaurants, which is a good sign. But are they spending more because the prices at restaurants have increased? We also have Canadians are choosing to spend on services over goods. And this is obviously goes to my point that we've already bought all of our goods. Now we're looking to get out and enjoy life again. And we can see quite the disparity that was kind of trending back towards earlier this year. We also have travel spend increasing. Although the travel numbers aren't back to what they were before, we're starting to pay more for travel, whether that's through the oil prices or because there's just such a demand. So this is something that I take a look at to see how the consumer is doing on a low level, because I do believe that that's an important part. If people are saving their money, they're not spending, it is something that impacts GDP, it is something that impacts the economy moving forward. Income is definitely one good way to check and see how the economy is doing, but another way to get an idea of what's happening on the consumer level is the third idea, which is a decline in employment. So we'll take a look at some factors, some areas that I'd look at. But more importantly, let's take a look at how Canada has recently performed. We'll jump to this Financial Post article here, and we say Canada's job gains triple forecasts, strengthening case for the Bank of Canada rate hike. So we know the Bank of Canada is looking at employment as an important metric to see if they can continue to raise interest rates, because that's an underlying sign that the economy is doing well. But let's read a little bit further. So Canada added 60,000 jobs this past June. That is 3 times what they were expecting. But the most important point here is that the unemployment rate ticked up 5.4. So we'll take a look at what the employment rate is here in Canada. We'll jump over to this trading economics site again, and we'll see that about 62% of Canadians are employed. Now, not everybody works. If you're less than 16 or 18 years old, or even if you're retired, you're not going to be considered in this 62% of people. But when we take a look at the long run average, we are trending up around usual. So it's not a big concern. But what is concerning and an important metric that they look at is, again, that unemployment rate that we discussed before. So again, using trading economics here, we can see that that 5.4% is the highest that it's been in like the past year. So we'll scroll back a little bit further, and it's not alarming when you look at it from a big picture. That's obviously what the federal government has been touting, that they've been able to keep the unemployment rate down, meaning the number of people that are looking for jobs is down. More people are employed than unemployed. We did see that major spike happen. That was obviously an anomaly, something that we've gotten past. But on the long-term trend, it's definitely on a downtrend. But when we look at in more of the shorter run, we are starting to see this number tick back up. Again, going to be a lagging indicator, but something to be keeping on your radar moving forward. The fourth area that we should be taking a look at to see if Canada's economy is in trouble is the amount of goods that we are producing. So if there is a decline in industrial production, it is not a good sign whatsoever. So we're going to take a look at trading economics here, and we can see what the Canadian economy has done in regards of an industrial production over the past 25 years. And we can see that there is peaks and valleys, and it goes with the cycle of the economy. And the thing that is most concerning is that after this 2020 peak, when companies had a backstop of the money from the government and the fact that we were all sitting at home spending money, is that it is on a decline and we're almost heading back to 0%. So we're not producing goods. That means our whole manufacturing side is potentially in trouble. And if we go back to that 08-09, the last recession that we were in, we saw just how negative it went. It was almost minus 15%. So something to keep on the radar. Again, another lagging indicator, which is unfortunate, something to keep on the radar. Last but not least, another area that you need to take into consideration when taking a look at the state of affairs of the Canadian economy is what is happening with wholesale and retail sales. Now, I know we did touch on this a little bit when we went through the RBC consumer report, because the two kind of work hand in hand. But the first one that we'll take a look at in trading economics is Canadians' retail sales. So we know that there's a lot of things that are impacting the consumer today, whether it's inflation. Inflation has definitely been a killer over the past couple of years, making the price of goods more expensive. We've also had higher mortgage rates. We've also had many other things that are taking money out of our pocket. And we can see a number that is relatively should be around that 1 to 5% is now on a major downturn. Now, we did talk about it before that we've kind of bought everything that we've needed to in the past couple of years, but that is a major implication on how the economy is doing, because if people aren't spending, then the GDP isn't growing. So these numbers do not look all the best in terms of the downtrend in the past couple of years, but we'll also take a look at the Canadian wholesale sales. And with this number, it definitely trends between that 0 to 3%. And on a shock, we've definitely seen this number uptick in the past year, although and not the best and steady all the way through, but we definitely had a killer March. I'm not entirely sure why that happened, but these numbers seem to be performing well. And again, something that you should take into consideration of how much money is flowing into the economy from a sales and retail perspective. And again, these are the 5 different areas that you can take a look at to see what is happening underneath the sheets, especially when it comes to Canada's economy. And we're going to get to the part where I give you my thoughts. And my thoughts are that it is so hard to predict a recession. It is very hard to know when the economy is going to falter. This is something that happens. It is in a natural economy that it does go into a recession. It calls out all of the bad stuff and gives an opportunity in the future to create brand new, great businesses. It gives the consumer a time to heal, time to save. And it's definitely hard on some people, and I definitely understand that. But in regards to where the Canadian economy is going to go in this next year, I have no idea. When it comes to investing, I'm buying good companies that I can withstand the pain that comes with a recession, companies that can increase their prices and consumers have to pay, utilities, banks, etc. Focusing on companies that can withstand the pain of a recession is where we need to look, because there's no point leaving money on the side unless it's in a high interest savings account or in a GIC, which are paying 4 to 5 to 6%, which is definitely a healthy yield. But if you're younger and you need some growth in your portfolio, a recession brings an opportunity where companies become undervalued and it gives you a good multiple growth in the future. So we should be kind of looking at this as an opportunity, especially if we have many, many moons to go with our stock portfolio. Now, obviously, if you have any concerns, reach out to a local financial professional. I'm definitely not that. I don't know if we are going into a recession. I definitely have a pile of cash right now in a high interest savings account that I'm waiting for opportunities to come. But the stock market just isn't giving me anything. And if we look at the stock market, it's always a leading indicator. It's looking 6 months, 8 months down the road, see what's going to happen. And right now, investors think that the Bank of Canada or even the Federal Reserve in the US are going to achieve the soft landing. Not the hard landing where the economies go into a recession, but the soft landing where we bounce back after a couple years of slow growth. Let me know down in the comments what you think about it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button. I definitely appreciate all of your support. If you want to learn more about the Bank of Canada, I'll drop a video right here. If you want to learn more about a high interest savings account ETF, I'll drop that link right here. I hope you all have a great week in the markets. Happy investing.